I've sat in a couple of them so far this morning, and I want to tell you, you guys have been pretty boring. So we're going to try to make this a little more exciting. Is that okay? Huffington Post, come on! Yeah!
It's super hard to see with all the lights, but I was sitting in the very, very last chair all the way in the corner, and I left a present. If somebody's there, you may find it.
I don't know what that means. Is it a good present?
It's kind of like Pokemon Go, except don't look for a Pokemon, look for something else.
Okay, so we'll just jump right off. Is Huffington Post now launching a whole new sort of Pokemon Go gamification campaign?
I will say one thing that we did launch in Q4, and we haven't even talked about this, is we did launch a mini Donald Trump game. We did have a Donald Trump game in iMessage on the Apple device, and we did it for fun, but part of it is where the media landscape has evolved to. It's really important for brands to form new, fun, vibrant, authentic connections with their audience and their consumers, and we thought, given the sort of significance of the US election, we should have some fun with this. We actually did, in fact, create a game.
See, this is setting it up so well because we've got this Pulitzer Prize winning platform represented by the CEO, Jared Grusd, here right now. But in 2005, it started off as a blog. Maybe more gamey, not taken as seriously. Now, lifestyle, entertainment, video, close to my heart, back in the CNN days, breaking news. And yet still keeping that combination of fun and news. And how do you blend all that? How do you become fun but also authentic in the world of alternative truth and post-truth and fake news and all of that? How do you do that?
I think one thing to think about is the human experience. All of us are people, but when you run a company or you run product, you start ascribing labels. Audience, consumers, customers, and all of a sudden you start referring to actual living, breathing human beings in these like generic terms. And the truth is, all of us as people have multiple interests. And yes. I can be serious and I can have fun. I can be funny. My wife says not often enough, but my daughters think enough. And I think it's really important to have that balance. And one of the things that I think the best digital publishers have done over the past 10 years has been to think about the way in which they publish content differently than historically. And what I mean by that is what we've heard all day in many forums is like the power of data to understand your audiences. And I think the best publishers really look at the data of what their people, their audiences, their consumers are actually doing on their properties and learning from that and adapting from that. What you realize is if you're serious all the time, at some point it's too much. If you're funny all the time, then you're not serious. And so getting that blend is really like part of the magic and math that's required to be successful.
Can you then take all of us back, those of you who might be out there thinking about digital publishing or a media niche? What did Huffington Post do right along the way?
Well, I think in every era in the history of media, there have been giant waves that have formed. Okay. And like all good surfers, you have to sort of like understand the break, get your board, paddle, and surf it just at the right time. And to Arianna Huffington's credit, who's the founder and obviously the namesake of the Huffington Post, what she realized is there's few trends that were all converging at the same time. The first is a massive change in the media landscape that was really produced by Google, because Google with search essentially opened up the internet, the World Wide Web, to all of us to then go discover stuff.
Right.
And in that process of discovery, very sophisticated content producers could actually create content that Google's algorithms would and their spiders would crawl to surface that content. And I think one of the things that we did really well was create content that was very Google friendly. And there's a formula to that below the surface that's really important. The second is creating an engagement layer. Right now we are talking to you, but is there a way that we can engage with you? It's not like I'm Bon Jovi that any of you are going to like run up on the stage and like dance with me. But
if you want, though, I mean, I think he's asking.
If you want to, you could. But like, is there a virtual way to get engagement? And I think what we created at the time called a blogging platform, if you translate it to today's terms, it's essentially a social network where we opened up Huffington Post to anyone in the world who had their own story to share.
Yes.
Whether you're a CEO, whether you're a politician, or whether you're a janitor, we want your story because we think your narrative needs to be heard. And opening our publishing platform to the world was the second great innovation. And the third was finally to marry that with world-class journalism. And we hired really great journalists and content creators and videographers and editors to actually create a kind of professional saliency to what we did. And I think those three things were the elements that made HuffPost great. And to put that in perspective, now as we sit here in 2017, HuffPost reaches 200 million people who come to our own properties on a monthly basis. We're in 17 countries in the world. And we've tried to apply that formula not just to our own properties, but the world has shifted to social media platforms. Facebook, Snapchat have become really big platforms. And we spent 2016 asking ourselves a question: how could we translate our experiences onto, for example, Facebook? And I'm very pleased to say that for 3 or 4 months in a row last year, we were able to get to 1 billion video views. And that was like brand new for us. So applying that same recipe to new platforms has been really fun.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, because started with blogs, got into the national, international hard journalism, won a Pulitzer in 2012, we're a finalist in the Pulitzers in 2016, and now talking about video and the way to engage audiences and make things really even experiential from understanding your world perspective. You say to everyone, if you haven't paid close attention to the Academy Award nominations.
Yeah, so we acquired a company in connection with our parent company AOL called Riot, which is an LA-based immersive video company. It specializes in virtual reality and augmented experiences, and they were nominated for an Academy Award in Los Angeles, and that will be decided on the next couple of weeks, which was really, really cool because, very often people think about scale. We've talked all day about scale and data and audiences and like really, really big terms, but in the end, you actually have to make a difference. And you have to make a difference in a way that actually matters to real people in their real lives. And I think one testament to that is like when you do win awards, it's like a vote of confidence that you're not just blasting people for metrics, but you're doing stuff that connects with people.
So describe then what that video that you've been nominated for an Academy Award is.
So Riot is really, really an incredible company who we acquired. And one of the narratives they've been really passionate about is the story of refugees around the world and sort of what their life has been. And essentially, this is a short film that follows the plight of refugees from the homeland to ending up in Germany. And what's really cool is when you read about this on the Huffington Post or other publications, you can have a very rational, intellectual understanding of what's happening. And of course, like in almost every Western country in the world, there's very big political debates taking place in real time. But what's really cool about this is to apply immersive video experiences. You get like a more emotional, visceral, tangible feeling of like what it's actually like. And sometimes when you transcend from the intellectual to the experiential, you form a different perspective. And I think for us to stay relevant, we've been around for 11 years. In the next decade, we have to continue to innovate. And whether it's immersive video experiences, whether it's new form of storytelling, and frankly, new products. Like I was joking about that game, and it was a little small game, but content companies also have to embrace product.
Yes.
Because like in the end, we have to create magical consumer experiences. Really the marriage of those consumer experiences with the content that I think is like the winning recipe.
And the idea of content is one that really compels me when you think about when I started out in news, how news was described and how news was delivered and processed. And you were touching on the fact that you're a dad, you're married, you've got 3 little girls, 10, 9, and 5, and the way they think of news is...
Well, this is really interesting. So what before this job, I've been the CEO of Huffington Post for 18 months. It's been an extraordinary experience for me. I've loved every second of it. But when my daughter came home from summer camp in Maine in the northeast part of the US, I'm like, Sienna, which is her name, I have news for you. I'm leaving Spotify to go work at the Huffington Post. And she's like, Dad, why would you leave Spotify? It's so cool. Number one. And number two, what does the Huffington Post do? And I'm like, well, it's the biggest digital news platform in the world. And she's like, Dad, I don't get why there needs to be a news platform in the world. Don't people just go to Facebook? Isn't that what Snapchat is? And for those of you who are of my daughter's generation, Musical.ly is a fast-growing network, and information is really consumed and shared on those platforms. Why does there have to be this other platform? And I will say, in the process of making this shift from Spotify to HuffPost, I spoke to all the smartest people I can think of to get advice, and every single person told me absolutely do it, and indeed I was going to do it anyways, because that's what I wanted to do. I really do love Spotify as well. But
you believe in what the Huffington Post can do.
And I really, really believe in it. But her question shows me that generations think about this differently. And now more than ever, like that planted a seed in my mind when I joined 18 months ago. But if you fast forward where the world has come, and we're joking about fake news and CNN, it's not a joke in the sense that there's huge parts of the world who can't actually legitimately differentiate between what is news, what is fake news. And that has profound implications on social constructs, political ecosystems, and as somebody whose my whole career has been essentially in industries wrapped around expression. I was at Google, Spotify, and now HuffPost. I personally believe that's a value that the world needs.
So tell me then why there's a blur, and defend why entertainment, game, lifestyle, all those facets of the human experience, as you say, still can add to a credible news delivery and gathering organization. How can that be blended?
I think here's one big change that's happened in the industry from when HuffPost was created. It used to be the case that people would show up to your website in a world where computers were the dominant platforms before people shifted to mobile devices. And they would type in HuffingtonPost.com or CNN.com, and they would go there. And when you went there, you already knew what you were looking for, and you would get that and you'd be entertained. I call that the front door. Like, you literally go to a museum, you walk in the Louvre from the front door, you then know what you're going to get, and you hopefully are delighted by the art in the Louvre. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But now we're at a point where people experience content brands through the side door. And what I mean by that is, it is still true that people go to the HuffPost directly and go to CNN directly or go to the BBC directly. That behavior still exists and will continue to exist. But there's this new behavior of people actually discovering your brand through the article. And why? Because if you think about Facebook, if you think about Twitter, you have a stream that your friends post content to, and you go, oh, that article looks interesting, I will click on it. And it's more your friend's recommendation that's doing it. And now the article's leading. In a world where the article is the new front door, you have this challenge in the ecosystem where what differentiates between a legitimate bona fide article that my friends sent, or what if I run in a different circle where my friends are putting an article that's fake? And who's the arbiter of that? And I think to Facebook's credit and to Google's credit, they're taking this problem very, very seriously, and they're working really, really hard at doing this. But to me, the answer to this question is ultimately the most simple one. It's not rocket science, but it's very hard to execute. In order to emerge and to thrive in today's media ecosystem, you have to have a brand that stands for something and that genuinely and authentically connects with human beings. Full stop. Like, how do you have a brand that resonates? And if you can achieve that goal, I think you can rise above all the noise in the system. And in order to achieve that goal, you have to stand for something. And that could be a political point of view, it could be an entertainment point of view, it could stand for innovation. You have to stand for something. And the challenge, though, is that as companies get to big scale, all companies want to grow and get to as big as possible. In the process of reaching hundreds of millions of people, it's hard to be as meaningful to everyone when you're trying to get to everyone.
Keep that defined sense of purpose.
And so that's like really the challenge. And that's the thing that like we're working very, very hard to do, to better articulate what that means for us over our next 10 years.
So we're pressed for time, but to leave us on that visionary final note, take me 10 years ahead with Huffington Post, or what the digital appetite or the platform or the way that consumers are going to be mobile, what have you. What's that look like 10 years from now?
Okay, so what it looks like, we will figure out. But here's the formula.
Okay.
It's the marriage of magic and math. We are very, very, on the math side, we're very focused on data, understanding how consumers consume, understand how revenue flows through our pipes, understanding how we get distribution, understanding our production side. That's math. All good companies need to do that in a digital era. But there has to be magic. The person who finds my surprise there, you may find that magical, you may not. You need to surprise, you need to delight, you need to innovate, you need to inform, you need to entertain, you need to inspire, you need to empower. Whatever it is that you want to do, go do it. But just don't do nothing. And I think now there's obviously big changes in the media industry, but the world needs brands to step up and stand for something that matters, and that's something we will for sure do.
So even from 10 years from now, when there may be some massive new technological way to deliver it, right, it's that combination of the human touch, how you combine the math and the magic to make a difference and know what you stand for. From the first time that he visited Dublin when he was a student and stayed at a youth hostel, you have to ask him privately what happened at that youth hostel, till today, where he is now back to Dublin with us at the Dublin Tech Summit, CEO of Huffington Post, Jared Grusd. I thank you, we all thank you. Give him a warm round of applause. Show that you're out there. Who got the surprise?
Thank you very much.
You.
That was great.
Terrific.